What are our thoughts on how we can affect the planet through our diet?
I don't know if I was reading a blog or something the other day. It was something online, and it was about little kids and how, well, we're all little kids at some point, obviously, but how when you're a little kid, you love animals. Like, you don't know if you're eating meat where necessarily you don't think about the whole thing, but you take any little kid and they just hug an animal in there. I think there's a picture of this little Chinese boy, and he was just hugging this dog like it was his mother, and that kind of joy, I think, when we realize that they're not here to serve us, just as people aren't here to serve us, and it's not that nobody's special, it's that everybody's special and everybody's important and everybody's contribution is important, and everything in the world has a place in that. And I think obviously animals and the environment and all this stuff, and practicing yoga has been important in my life and people that are around me, because it sensitizes you, and the more you do things like yoga or starting to eat plant-based, you become more sensitized to all these things. You're like, oh, I shouldn't kick the dog, I shouldn't, eat the pig, things that you may have just done because they're in your culture. Maybe you realize that just because other people have done it before and it's okay, and the television says it's okay, maybe it's not necessarily the right thing to do.
Well, my team, thankfully, Joy and Benet, who are with us here today, we often say when you become a vegan, your carbon footprint is automatically 25% less on the planet. And at a personal level, I think what's got me excited about what we're doing after almost 30 years now is our relationship with the farmers that we deal with. Starting about now, the local farmers who come in from the tri-state area, and they bring in fresh crops literally on a daily basis, which is very inspiring to us personally and to our chefs. However, because of climate change, the growing season is longer and longer, so it's weird a little bit because, as you know, we had an unseasonably warm winter, so a lot of things are sprouting early, and the maintenance of the land and how we deal with it and how we deal with water systems and all of that is very, very big, and I think we can't lose sight of that. I mean, people are worried about oil and gas and that. I think we should be worried about water a lot more, because apparently even now in New York we had a dry winter and we're looking for rain all of a sudden. So I personally take none of this for granted, meaning where my food comes from, how I want to have it, how I want to prepare it, what it does for my life. I'm now a grandfather of 19-month-old twins, and I want to make sure there's food for them 20 years from now.
The environmental problems with GMOs may be worse than the health dangers, because the genes that we release today can outlast the effects of global warming and nuclear waste, because it's a self-propagating pollution of the gene pool. In addition, the Roundup, which is used on Roundup-ready crops, the most popular GMOs, is omnipresent. It's found in the air, the rain, the water, the blood, surface water, groundwater, and it's very, very dangerous. It promotes plant diseases, it causes birth defects, it changes the shape of amphibians, etc., and it persists in the soil for months or years and promotes soil diseases. The Bt toxin-producing crops, the Bt ends up lively in the soil, washed in the stream. It interferes with marine ecosystems. The entire system of GMOs reduces biodiversity, harms monarch butterflies, probably contributes to the demise of the bees, and is a perfect storm for environmental disaster. On top of that, the biotech industry wants to eliminate the diversity of seeds to force farmers to just choose the limited genetics within the catalogs, which put the entire food supply at risk by limiting the genetics at the time of climate change. So from an environmental perspective, it could be the worst situation we're facing, so we need to stop it now.
Going veg is such an effective and efficient way to help the planet, because you're helping it on so many levels. We're talking about decreasing the greenhouse gases, saving water, saving trees. The statistic is every person who doesn't eat meat saves 4 acres of trees a year. Most people aren't planting 4 acres of trees, certainly not here in Manhattan. We're saving vast amounts of water, and it's all by doing something so simple that we'd be doing anyway, which is eating 3 times a day.
Something I've been doing in the last few months since my son started kindergarten is cooking more with kids. And I actually teach cooking classes at his old preschool a couple times a month, which is hands down the cutest thing I've ever done in my life. These little tiny kids. And I don't talk with them about eating vegan or vegetarian. And I actually got a little bit of controversy going in the school with the staff. They said, well, are you going to try to make them vegan? I'm like, no, I'm not even going to talk about that. I just want to get them excited about healthy food. I want to get them excited about fruits and vegetables because they're not going to get that. As soon as they reach public school, that's off the table. So let's do it now. So now I go in, we make things like green smoothies. I did that also at my son's elementary school, which is in Brooklyn. And I'm just doing these food education things, reaching out to the kids, getting them excited, getting them to taste things that they might not otherwise have at home. And there's a bunch of recipes on my site if you're interested to see, like, what are some kid-friendly recipes that have been tested. You can look at deliciousvitality.com, and that has a bunch of things. But I'm just getting more passionate, more interested in teaching kids, getting them educated, so that as they grow up, they know that they already like what real food tastes like, and that they're going to continue a healthy lifestyle.
Thanks. There's a whole part in Vegucated, refer to it as the environmental section, where we list all the stats, and we have, fun cartoon graphics in there. But just to name a few of them, I used to think that organic and free range was enough as an environmentalist. I'm doing my part, that's all we need. Well, guess what? It's not, because the average dairy cow consumes 50 or more gallons of water per day. When you go vegan, it's so much lower than that. When you stop eating fish, then guess what? You're saving the ocean. A third of the ocean species are already in collapse. By mid-century, they'll all be in collapse if we still, continue at the rate that we're eating fish. And in terms of land use and so forth, there was an article in the New York Times last week by James McWilliams talking about the myth of sustainable meat. And one thing that he mentioned was, hey, if all the cows in the U.S. were pasture raised right now, then we would need half the land of the U.S. for that pasture, because these cows take about 10 to 20 acres, basically. And now already a swath of the Brazilian rainforest the size of France is gone for pasture for cattle. So when you go vegan and vegetarian, it does feel amazing. You are literally affirming life every day, 3 times a day. Your own life, animals, and the health of the planet.